Alrighty, so match week number 2 is upon us, and this is something you're going to hear me say throughout the year that is going to be common whenever a match week happening in the weekend. All the games is going to be happening on Saturday. Besides the one matinee games, it's going to be happening on afternoon and on national television on Fox. All the other 13 games is going to be night games, and I've already mentioned how difficult that is, but it's going to be even more difficult this week because I am going to be going to one of these games, but I'll try my best in terms of it. Watch as much soccer as possible, and if I do miss some of these MLS game lives, I can always go back to watch the recap and the highlights of these games. But nevertheless, let us actually begin with the first game, and that of course is the matinee game between LAFC versus the Portland Timbers that will start at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff we probably know it's going to be 25 minutes after because this game is on Fox, and whenever a game is on Fox, it's always 25 minutes after. So probably 1:55 p.m. As the actual kickoff time. Now, obviously, for LAFC, they were one of the 3 teams that did not play in the opening weekend, and as you all know, their game should have been on if the Mother Nature actually did not decide to curse MLS in terms of not having El Tráfico on the opening weekend. Whereas for the Portland Timbers, they were also part of a game where the weather delayed the game. But unlike the El Tráfico, where it was postponed all the way to July, their game between Sporting KC was postponed to Monday. But that also means that they have a short week. This is going to be a quick turnaround for them to prepare, and also not easy when you have to face against the defending MLS Cup champion that is going to have their MLS Cup title ceremony in the beginning of the game. Now, all-time meeting between both of these teams, it's been close. 6-5 and 5 in favor of LAFC, but when you look at the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it's also been very close. It was LAFC winning the last meeting 2-1 on the road. Before, it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. And then we have 3 straight 2-1 win for the Portland Timbers, starting with them winning on the road against LAFC, then winning at home, and then winning at home again. So, again, it's all these meetings, it's been low scoring, it's been tight, and I expect this could be the same case. And especially, this is going to be something I'll mention a couple of times, especially with teams involving CCL, because we know the CONCACAF Champions League is around the corner. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not if LAFC is going to really put their strongest side, because they do have to travel to Costa Rica to play against Alajuelense in CCL. But I think because of the fact that they didn't have a match week last week, I expect they'll probably go full strength in this one, even if they have the short week to prepare for CCL. You want to get these guys some competitive minutes before we get into CCL. I mean, you don't want to have a situation where we've seen before where MLS team are still in preseason mode and they don't have any competitive game under their belt before diving straight into CCL. And knowing the fact that the first opponent that LAFC is facing in CCL is not going to be easy, I have a feeling they're going to go full strength in this one, and we'll see if they can beat a Timbers side that, in the last game, they didn't play well against Sporting KC, but they were able to grind out the victory. But we'll see whether they can do the same thing in this match against LAFC. Now, moving on, we got the first of 6 games that will be starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, and the first one is Atlanta United versus Toronto FC. So Atlanta 1-0-0, while TFC 0-0-1. Atlanta, of course, with that dramatic 2-1 win against the San Jose Earthquakes. While for TFC, it was the opposite. They lost in a dramatic game between them and DC United. But in terms of the all-time meeting, TFC still leads the all-time meeting, 5-4-4 over Atlanta United. And the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was Atlanta winning 4-2 against Toronto FC. Before, it was a 2-1 win that TFC had against Atlanta, a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, a 2-0 road win for Atlanta United, and then a 1-0 win for Atlanta over TFC. Now, the good news for TFC coming into this game is that I heard Lorenzo Insigne, his injuries that he suffered during the opening weekend, it doesn't look like it's going to be serious. It looks like he could be back in this game, though he is still listed questionable. But obviously, this is going to be a big game for TFC, and see how they, of course, bounce back after, again, just a very, very gut-punching loss that they suffer in the hands of DC United. Like, they had that game won, only for them to give up two goals in stoppage time, which, again, similar to what we saw in the Atlanta versus the San Jose Earthquake games, only it was kind of the opposite, and Atlanta was the one that were in the in the winning position of coming back from 2-1 down. So yeah, we'll see how this game, of course, will turn out. But moving on in the next match, speaking of DC United, they're in on the road against the Columbus Crew. So the Crew, yeah, the first game, they definitely took a throttling in the hands of the team that I've said that is still the team to beat in the East. That is the Philadelphia Union, and they're playing against a DC team that, of course, pulled off that dramatic win against Toronto FC. All-time meeting, 38-13 and 34 in favor of DC United. Remember, these two teams are original teams that came into the league back in '96 in their first season. But in the last 5 head-to-head meeting, it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams. Then Columbus won 3-0 against DC. Then they won 3-1 on the road against DC. But then DC did win 4-2 on the road against Columbus. And then Columbus won 3-1 against DC United. So far, Columbus has had the edge in terms of the last 5 head-to-head matchup. And you know that they definitely wants to bounce back after that disappointing result against the Philadelphia Union. I mean, Wilfried Nancy's side, that was, for him, that was definitely not a great experience for him in his first game in charge for Columbus. And I do think that it's going to be better in this one, but we'll see whether if that is going to be the case. And, for DC, yes, they got that dramatic win against TFC, but again, it's not every day you get to face against a cupcake kind of defense, and I think this is going to be a game that can really test DC to see whether or not if they are potentially could be in early contention or compete, or the fact that we're going to see similar to what happened last season where, remember how they got off to a good start to the season in the first 2 games, and then it basically went downhill from then. Moving on, in the next match, we got Inter Miami versus the Philadelphia Union. So this is one of the few matchups that feature both teams that won their opening weekend's matchup. Inter Miami winning 2-0 against Montreal at home, while Philly falling Columbus 4-1, as I mentioned. All-time meeting, the Union has definitely have the upper edge, 3-2 and 1 all-time over Inter Miami. And in the last 5 head-to-head matchup, they won the last game when both of these teams play at Drive Pink Stadium with a 2-1 victory. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams, a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. Then Inter Miami won 2-1 on the road against the Union, and then the Union win 3-0 against Inter Miami. So again, for Inter Miami, this is going to be a tougher test because you are facing a team like the Philadelphia Union that, after the opening weekend's action, you can see they definitely are taking a redemption tour in a serious note. They are literally going to try to bulldoze everybody in their crest to get themselves back to MLS Cup, and we'll see whether or not if Inter Miami can slow them down in this one. But now, moving on, we got New England versus the Houston Dynamo. So again, for the second consecutive week, the Houston Dynamo is involving an inter-conference matchup and facing an Eastern Conference team. I think they're the only team to do that in their first two weeks. But coming into this game, the Dynamo, of course, fresh off of a disappointing but encouraging loss against FC Cincinnati on the road. Well, New England won their opening matchup with a late winner from Henry Kessler against Charlotte FC. All-time meeting, it's a 13-8-7 record in favor of the Revs. But in terms of the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was Houston winning 3-1 against New England, then New England winning 2-1 against the Dynamo. Then the Revs did win 2-0 on the road against the Dynamo before the Revs won 2-0 again against the Houston Dynamo, and then they had a thrilling 3-3 draw between both of these teams. So certainly the Revs have been the team that has the upper hand in the last 5 head-to-head matchup, but I will say that for the Revs, they got to be careful when they face against this Dynamo team, because like I said, I was very encouraged to see how the Dynamo play in the last game. They were really giving FC Cincinnati all they can handle, and if they would have put away some of their chances, the scoreline would have been a whole lot different. And that's the key for this Dynamo team. They want to continue to be competitive on the road and show that they can compete with even some of the best team in the league. And eventually result is going to turn out, and we'll see whether or not if they can follow that good performance against FC Cincinnati by facing another team that could be in contention in the East, that is the New England Revolution. Now, moving on in the next match, we got the New York Red Bulls versus Nashville SC. So the Red Bulls, of course, a disappointing but also controversial loss against Orlando City. I'm pretty sure Red Bulls fans are still upset to this day, especially that penalty kick called or the handball call that went against them. But they're facing against a Nashville side that got off to a great start, and they were the first winner of the 2023 regular season after winning 2-0 against NYCFC. Now, in terms of the all-time meeting, both of these teams only met 2 times, and so far the Red Bulls have won 1 and also drawn 1. The last time both of these teams played was a 1-1 draw before the Red Bulls did win 2-0 against Nashville SC. And there's no doubt that, I know Red Bulls fans are still upset about that Orlando City game because of that controversial call that went against them. But I didn't think that they played well in that game either. And that, I know that this team could be better than what we saw in the last game. I think that last game was just an example of a team still kind of trying to find their competitive edge. And we'll see whether if they can do so in this game against Nashville, which, again, it's a team that, they do well on the road, especially last season. They were right up there in terms of one of the best road team in the league. And the Red Bulls last season was one of the worst team at home. And Red Bull Arena was a problem for them, where they just cannot get wins at home. So we'll see if that, of course, is going to be the case again. And if that is the case, then I would say Nashville could be in favor coming into this early matchup against the New York Red Bulls. But now moving on, in the next game, we got Orlando City versus FC Cincinnati. So this, again, another matchup that featured 2 teams that won their opening weekend. As I mentioned, Orlando, a 1-0 win against the New York Red Bulls, albeit in a controversial way, while FC Cincinnati was able to hang on to win 2-1 against the Houston Dynamo. All-time meeting, Orlando still leads the all-time meeting, but only just with a 3-2-2 record. But the last 5 head-to-head meeting, it's been Cincinnati, the one that's been getting the upper edge. 1-0 win that they had against Orlando before a 2-1 road win against Orlando City. And then Orlando did win 1-0 on the road before it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. And then Orlando City win 3-0 against FC Cincinnati. And just like what I said about the Red Bulls, I didn't think Orlando City played well in the last game too. Sure, they of course got 3 points in that one, but I really think that they kind of got lucky in terms of how they got all 3 points with the controversial call, and that they didn't really do a lot of attack. And now they're going to be facing against a Cincinnati team that, just like Nashville, this is a team that is one of the most dangerous teams on the road. They have won some of the most games on the road last season, and I have no doubt that if Orlando City is not careful in this one, they could potentially lose this one. In fact, I'll also say that, like what I said about LAFC, will Orlando City maybe think about punting this game? Knowing the fact that they got that big game against Tigres down in Mexico, do they think about punting this game and just maybe think about focusing that competition? Because that, when you're facing against Tigres, especially down in Mexico, you want to make sure you have the best squad and you have the most fresher squad. So we'll see. Will Orlando City maybe rest some guys in this game against Cincinnati? And if that, of course, is the case, I do think Cincinnati is going to be favorites coming in this one. Again, this is a team that in the last game they didn't look very good, but again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that this team still kind of struggle at home, and getting a home win was really important for them, as that was one of the big problems. And now they're going to go back on the road to play a place that they know how to win on the road last season. I'm definitely fancy that they can definitely get all 3 points in this game against an Orlando City side that maybe will rest some guys because of that big CCL first leg match against Tigres. Now, moving on, in the next match, we get to the first of, I believe, 3 games that's going to be kicking off. Or actually, no, 4 games that's going to kick off. I'm actually looking at the other board to see how many games that kicks off at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. The answer is 4 games. The first game is Austin FC versus Montreal. So both of these teams lost their opening matchup. In fact, this is, again, one of the few matchups where both teams did not win their first ever game of the 2023 regular season. And for Austin, yeah, they definitely want to forget about the last game against St. Louis, and especially Kip Keller wants to forget about the last game against St. Louis. An absolute nightmare of a game, one of the worst individual performance we've seen in a match in recent history. But in terms of the all-time meeting, they only met once, and that was last season, with Austin winning 1-0 against Montreal. So, yeah, for Austin, they definitely wants to have a bounce back. And again, the question is, do Josh Wolf have the balls to basically Kip Keller back in the starting 11? I'm assuming yes. I do think that he has to put him in the starting 11 because they don't really have a lot of option, and especially I do think that that last game, while it was a horror game for Kip Keller, it's going to be a learning experience. I mean, I do feel bad for the kid. He was clearly thrown into the fire, and he got burned every time with those goals that Austin, of course, can see. But the last thing you want to do in terms of a young kid is just decided to not decided to bench him and just kind of shatter his confidence, because one thing that you want a young kid to do after having a bad game is maybe just talk to him, just trying to get his confidence back up, and then bounce back in the next game. Because if Kip Keller bounced back in the next game, there's no doubt that I don't think any Austin fans would be talking about that St. Louis resort for a bit. But that being said, for Montreal again, last game against Inter Miami, I didn't think they played bad in that game, but they just couldn't finish. And this is a game that they have to finish, because this is a very strong Austin side. They're still very strong going forward on the attacking end. And just like the game against Inter Miami, I do think Montreal is going to get chances against this Austin side, knowing the fact that the back line is still a huge concern for Los Verdes. But we'll see how this game, of course, would turn out. Maybe it could be a high scoring game if that, of course, is the case. I mean, every Austin game seems to always be very entertaining from last season, and the last game pretty much just another example of that. And I feel like it's going to be the case for at least these next couple of games, unless if they find some defensive reinforcement in the near future. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the last 6 games that's going to finish off in terms of busy Saturday action of match week number 2. So moving on, in the next game, we got the Chicago Fire versus NYCFC. So the Chicago Fire, of course, were the benefit of last week in terms of winning the bye week sweepstake, which, by the way, this week, in terms of the bye week sweepstake, I think Minnesota United, of course, won that award. So, this will be one week that at least I don't have to pull my hair out and just kind of go through a heart-stopping moment seeing the Loons play either on the road or at home. But nevertheless, in this game between the Chicago Fire versus NYCFC, again, the Fire playing for the first time this season against an NYCFC side that is fresh off of a disappointing 2-0 loss against Nashville SC. All-time meeting, NYCFC has pretty much dominated the all-time meeting, 10-5-3 over the Chicago Fire, and the last 5 head-to-head pretty much speaks itself. They won 2-0 on the road against the Fire, 1-0 at home against the Fire, 1-0 again at home against the Fire. Then Chicago did win 2-0 against NYCFC before it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. And I think for both of these teams, I know it's early in the season, but both of these teams are desperate to try to get all 3 points. I mean, for NYCFC, the good news for them is that they do have James Sands back in this team, and I don't know whether if he's going to be involved in this team because they just announced back on Wednesday. I mean, I'm assuming he's probably at best maybe coming off the bench in this one. And then today they just also announced the permanent signing of Santi Rodriguez, which I was kind of surprised that they didn't confirm it, because I thought a couple of weeks when I mentioned in the News of the Week episode, I mentioned it was pretty much confirmed, but it is now officially confirmed that Santi Rodriguez is coming back to NYCFC. Though again, I don't think he's going to be playing in this one, but yeah, it's going to be big for NYCFC to bounce back, and especially. The good news is they do face against a opponent that they do well against, the Chicago Fire, but the Chicago Fire will want to get off to a good start, because, again, a lot of people, including myself, are doubting on this team, and we'll see whether or not if they can prove those doubters wrong by getting off to a good, strong start. But that being said, moving on in the next match, we got FC Dallas versus the LA Galaxy. So this is another game featuring a team that lost in the opening weekend against a team that did not play in the opening weekend. That is the LA Galaxy. Now, in terms of all-time meeting, 39, 13, and 36 in favor of the Galaxy. Last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was Dallas winning 1-0 against the Galaxy, and then Dallas winning 3-1 on the road against the Galaxy. Then it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams. Then Dallas won 4-0 against the Galaxy before the Galaxy won 2-0 against FC Dallas. So Dallas has had the Galaxy number, at least in the last 4 head-to-head meeting, and that, certainly they want to bounce back after just an incredible flat performance against Minnesota United in the last game. But that being said, for the Galaxy, we know that this is the team that could be capable of competing in the Western Conference. And even though that they won't have Chicharito in this game because of the fact that he mentioned he's going to be out for 2 to 5 weeks, this is the time for Dejan Joveljic to back up what he said about how he deserved to be the starter, because now he's been given the chances to do so. And I wonder whether if he's going to make a decent impact on this Galaxy side. But again, for FC Dallas, there is no doubt that they want to bounce back in this game, because this is a team that last season, we know that this is a very good home team, and you know that they don't want to lose back-to-back games. I mean, they want to show that they are a team that could be for real in the Western Conference. And not to mention, down the line, this could be a preview of a matchup in the playoffs, because I do think both of these teams can make it to the playoffs by the end of the season. They need to prove that they can bounce back after just again, a very rough first game in that game against Minnesota United. But now moving on in the next game, and a game that I think a lot of people are anticipating, including myself, which is why I'm actually wearing St. Louis for the second video in a row. I wear it doing the last review because of that big win and them making history of only becoming the 8th team to win in their first ever game as an expansion club. But now they get a chance for their home opener against Charlotte FC. That will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. As I mentioned, St. Louis won their inaugural game 3-2 against Austin, but Charlotte lost their first game of the season at home against the New England Revolution. And not to mention, again, this is the first ever meeting, and that, again, the hype level has to be through the roof in St. Louis. Like, I've heard that pretty much tickets have been long sold out for this game, and that I expect there should be a party in this one. I mean, whether if St. Louis win or lose, I expect the atmosphere will be just something that would be right up there in terms of some of the best atmosphere that we experience. And it makes sense, because again, anytime when you have an expansion team playing their first ever home game, the hype level is through the roof. I mean, just ask Charlotte last season when they had their first game against the Galaxy. It was 75,000 strong, and the atmosphere was just through the roof. And even on a losing effort, I'm pretty sure all those folks were having a great party. And now it's St. Louis' turn to have the great party. But for sure, they definitely know that they got their party spoiled by the Galaxy, so now they're gonna try to play the Galaxy role, trying to spoil the party for St. Louis in this one. But it's not gonna be easy, because this St. Louis team, after just watching their opening game, this is a team that I think could surprise a lot of people, and that this is gonna be a team that I don't think could be off to a slow start like what we see a lot of expansion team. And we'll see whether they can do so against Charlotte FC in this one. But now moving on into the next game, and the only game that will be starting at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and the Mountain Time Zone kickoff, is the Colorado Rapids versus Sporting KC. So both of these teams, of course, lost their opening matchup, with Sporting KC losing 1-0 against the Portland Timbers. But for Colorado, yeah, they definitely want to put their last game behind the rearview mirror as quick as possible, because I think if they're out of all the team that had probably the most disappointing season opener, it's got to be the Colorado Rapids. I mean, maybe Austin might be one of them, but I think that you kind of have to give credit to St. Louis and how they fought back. Colorado, yeah, they definitely didn't show any fight back in that game against the Seattle Sounders. But all-time meeting between both of these teams, Sporting KC still leads the all-time meeting, 35, 20, and 27. Last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was 2-1 win that Sporting KC had against the Rapids, before the Rapids did win 2-0 against Sporting KC. There was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, a 0-0 draw between both of these teams, and then Sporting won 3-1 against the Colorado Rapids. And yeah, I feel like this game is going to be a bigger telling point for the Colorado Rapids than it is for Sporting KC, because again, anytime when you come into a game where both teams come off of a loss, that they want to bounce back in the second week. But I think especially for the Colorado Rapids, I mean, the last game, it was just one of the worst opening performance I've seen the team have played in the season opener. And for a team that wants to to show that, last year was kind of just a down year and that they can get themselves back to being a playoff contender team. They need to show something in this one. And it's not going to be easy because Sporting KC want to get all 3 points in this one. And especially in the last game, I thought they played well against the Timbers in the last game. They just couldn't finish in the last one. And if they can do that, I do think that they have a shot in this one against the Colorado Rapids. But we'll see whether that is going to be the case. But now moving on in the next match, and this is the game that I am going to be going because, I think I haven't missed a season opener for the Quakes for a while now. I mean, I went to one in 2022, I went to one in 2021, and then, of course, I went to one in 19, 18, and 17. So it's only fitting for me to go to another season opener, and this time the Quakes were opening their, well, not season opener, but home opener, that is. They, of course, opening at home against the Vancouver Whitecaps. And again, this is a matchup between two teams that lost their opening weekend matchup and kind of in a bit of a devastating fashion. I mean, especially for the Quakes, I don't really need to talk about a little bit more than that complete choke job that they had in stoppage time against Atlanta United. And then the Vancouver Whitecaps, a team that looked like for most part were dominating against RSL, and then they got caught with a sucker punch, and next thing you know, they went down 2-1 and never able to get the equalizer or even come back to win that one. Now, this, of course, is the first of two games that will start at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. In terms of the all-time meeting, surprisingly, the Whitecaps still has the all-time meeting over the Quakes, 11, 12, and 9. And I say that's surprising because the Quakes have actually done well against the Whitecaps, at least in the last 5 head-to-head meeting. It was a 2-0 win that they had against Vancouver. A free draw between both of these teams in a game where the Quakes should have won that one because they led 3 times in that game. Then they drew 1-1 against Vancouver, lost 3-0 against the Whitecaps, but then drew 0-0 against the Vancouver Whitecaps. And yeah, I'm interested to see how this game, of course, would play out. And obviously, like I said, I talk about how this is one of those games when you have two teams that lost their opening weekend's matchup, they want to bounce back. I would say this is the same thing, and especially for both of these teams, the way that they lost that opening weekend matchup, which is such a heartbreaking fashion. But at the same time, they play relatively well. It's going to be interesting to see who is going to be the team that is going to bounce back coming into this one. But now moving on into the last match of this preview, and the last match to wrap off match week number 2 is the Seattle Sounders versus RSL. So this, I feel like, is probably one of the most underrated game from this match week because, I know a lot of people are really looking forward to this one, and there's also other games that a lot of people might be interested in, but I feel like this is the one that is flying under the radar of a matchup that people should keep an eye on because, for a while, the Seattle Sounders have always get automatic win against RSL, but recently that has kind of changed. I mean, RSL has kind of got Seattle the numbers, and that kind of all started in the playoffs when RSL eliminated the Seattle Sounders in the playoffs back in 2021. But nevertheless, both of these teams did win the opening weekend's matchup. Seattle smashing Colorado 4-0 at home, while RSL with a great come-from-behind win against the Vancouver Whitecaps. In terms of the all-time meeting, again, because RSL has started to get more wins recently, they're now leading the all-time meeting, but just barely with a 16-8-5 record. In the last 5 head-to-head matchup, they won 2-1 against the Seattle Sounders. That is RSL in the last match, and then they won 1-0 against Seattle. It was a 0-0 draw, but RSL did win that one because that was the playoff game, or the David Ochoa game, as some people might remember, because he single-handedly carried that team to a point where they won it in a PK shootout. Then they won 1-0 against the Seattle Sounders. Before the last time Seattle was able to beat RSL was back in 5 matches ago when they won 2-1 against RSL. So, like I said, this is a team that has been able to cause problem for the Seattle Sounders. And, for the Seattle Sounders, as much as that opening weekend's matchup was dominant against the Colorado Rapids, I think this is going to be a real test against RSL, because knowing this is the team that has that never say die mentality and also have that mentality to really give it at all, I don't think it's going to be easy for the Sounders in this one. And don't be surprised if RSL can do the same thing that they did last week against Cascadia team just north of Seattle. That is the Vancouver Whitecaps. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this game, of course, would turn out. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for my quick preview of the 14 games that's going to be happening in match week number 2. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video. And as always, let me know in the comments below what do you think your prediction is for all 14 of these games. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.